Welcome to Less Than 12 Parsecs, the fastest Star Wars podcast in the galaxy. Now here's your host, Tim McMahon.
I was not elected to watch my people suffer and die while you discuss this invasion in a committee. If this body is not capable of action, I suggest new leadership is needed. I move for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum's leadership.
With the US presidential election just days away, I wanted to try and find a way to interject a little political discussion into Less Than 12 Parsecs. But in today's extremely polarized world, how could I do that without upsetting half the listeners? Easy. I'll just invite the hosts of the Beltway Banthas podcast onto the show. So please join me in welcoming Stephen Kent to Less Than 12 Parsecs. Stephen, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, it's a real delight to be on the show. Thanks, Tim.
For people who haven't heard your show, can you please give them the elevator pitch? Or perhaps I should say, the turbo lift pitch?
Yeah, of course. So what we say at the beginning of our show is that we are the Star Wars and Politics podcast live from the hive of... So we are a politics and Star Wars podcast that covers the politics of Star Wars, as well as how Star Wars kind of creeps into and impacts our own world's politics. It's a lot of fun, and we do a bi-weekly show on it.
I read one review online that called your show the smartest Star Wars podcast out there. How do you feel about having such a title?
Oh, well, that's really nice. I haven't seen that myself, and that's definitely a word of encouragement. This is obviously a touchy subject and a really high-tension year for American life. Talking about whether or not Star Wars is an inherently liberal or a conservative or other tale is very divisive and can definitely get people sort of into their combative stance. So if we are able to navigate that in a way that makes everyone feel respected, enlightened, and walk away with a bigger appreciation of Star Wars, then we feel really good about that. So that's great to hear.
I do think you have some of the smartest guests on your show. I especially like how you get interviews with elected officials. How do you get them to come on the show and open up about their nerdy side?
Yeah, so the premise of that was actually pretty easy. I thought when we were putting together the podcast, well, what does a podcast about their other side besides, being asked about like tax policy and what they think about abortion? What they want to do is they want to connect with people, and nobody, or I guess everybody in politics likes sharing their geeky side or being like, oh, I like Star Trek, or oh, I love Lord of the Rings, and talking about something that's a little bit more normal. And so I thought if I were a politician, I would love to do an interview on Star Wars and talk a little bit about my views on the dark side and the light side. And so I actually found it to be pretty easy to get interviews with lawmakers because they're actually looking for opportunities to talk about something that's a little bit light and fluffy in a way that kind of makes good press, or good and easy press for them.
One of the biggest criticisms about the prequels was that there's too much politics in the story, that Star Wars and politics really shouldn't mix. Yet here you go and create a great show that combines Star Wars and politics very nicely. What lessons on this topic do you think you could teach George Lucas?
I think you just don't be afraid of tackling important issues. People connect with movies more. Of politics woven into the prequels gave something for people to talk about. It gave everyone something to read into. And really, there were politics in the original trilogy as well. They were just more woven into, I think, the underpinnings of the show rather than the overpinnings of the shows, not the shows, but the movies. So I think you just don't be afraid, and you actually try to connect with what people are talking about. The Force Awakens is pretty devoid of politics in a way that I think actually cheapens the films. So yeah, I give a lot of credit to George Lucas for having the courage and the resolve to put politics into the prequels. It made them better movies.
All right, last question. DC is a great town for tourists. I've been there many times and hope to come back again soon. Is there a good Star Wars place for tourists who are coming to our nation's capital? Someplace you'd really recommend?
You know what? I guess the Air and Space Museum, because they show Star Wars movies. They show Star Wars movies in 3D at the Air and Space Museum in just an amazingly wide and high-def movie theater, and it's really, really cool. So that's definitely something you got to consider stopping by and seeing.
Great. I'll be sure to check it out the next time I'm in town. Hey, before we go, you want to tell folks where they can find you online?
Yeah, we're pretty active on Twitter, so you can find us at Beltway Banthas, and you can connect with me at Stephen_Kent, and I love to chat on Twitter, so please come find me.
Great. Thanks, Stephen, for coming on the show.
The Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe secure society.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
You've been listening to Less Than 12 Parsecs, the fastest Star Wars podcast in the galaxy, part of the expanded Fandomverse network of shows. For links and show notes, visit our website, 12parsecspodcast.com. Follow Less Than 12 Parsecs on Twitter at 12parpod, on Instagram at 12 Parsecs Podcast, on Tumblr at 12 Parsecs Podcast, and find us on Facebook as well. And please let us know what you think. Email us at 12parsecspodcast at